London and Madrid doing the engineering. The interesting thing is that to build this, they selected Siemens. You know, usually in a normal house, you have a main contractor doing steel and concrete, and then somebody doing the cables and the digital. In this case, there was so much digital that the main contractor was Siemens, somebody doing automation, and then they subcontracted the steel and the concrete because it was easier in that way. This is the final design, so you see the two buildings, two boxes. The only fixed component, in the end, you know, they wanted something fixed, so these are two boxes. One is an info point, one is a cafe, and then everything else is actually digital water. All these movable walls. You got the roof that goes up and down. You got a basement. You don't need a basement, but they wanted additional space for storage. But we could have done without the basement. Our idea, Olivier Philippe and Jean Ster, had a great idea to create this long boulevard that goes from the new station by Ferrater to the bridge by Zaha Hadid here. And so it's a long boulevard. So we wanted our building to completely disappear onto the boulevard when the roof goes down. So then the idea is that the whole building is really only this roof. When it goes down, no architecture. When it goes up, you got a full 3D interactive architecture. Last year it was open like 80%. It will be fully functional this summer with a festival in Zaragoza. This was actually Andres himself doing tests before the opening. You see everything's still a bit messy, the water being cut. This guy was quite puzzled. See his face while he was seeing some tests before the opening. This was coming down from the boulevard towards the building. This was actually trying also projections onto the water, so the water would get colors and additional things in addition to actually the pixels themselves, the water pixels. And this was myself trying not to get wet at the entrance. And here I got an interesting story to tell you, because so I told you there's 3,000 valves, and there's all these sensors that detect when you're getting closer to the water, so the water will open and respond to you. So you got more people in the inside, the wall will move to accommodate more people. You approach the building and the water will part in order to let you in as the door. However, one day, actually all the sensors stopped working. And probably they were running Windows crashed or something like that. So, however, that day, it was actually even more fun, because that night, all the kids from Zaragoza came to the building, and the game was different. It was not a building anymore that would respond to you, that you approach it and it will open to serve you. But it was a building that would engage with you more like a game. So the building would still make circles and cuts, and then you had to jump through the cuts without getting wet. So you had to engage with the space in a different way. So it was even more successful without the sensor than with the sensor. If you look on YouTube, you have actually hundreds of videos, very bad videos, footage, but taken by people who were just playing with this, jumping through the thing without getting wet. And the building became like a living thing that was fighting you instead of being a slave. And we thought it was quite interesting because, as a designer, as an architect, you often design things and think about how people will use it, but then reality always surprises you. And then the other thing that's interesting is that what we're really trying to do, I believe, with digital and physical, with bits and atoms, with the cities of the future, is create something that is more similar to a living thing, is more similar to, it's given to our, is what people always wanted to do. Think about the Pantheon in Rome, right? That was a beautiful piece of interactive architecture, but they couldn't move the bricks. So they actually did that hole and let the sun animate the space, become an interactive space through the sun that changes inside. So what we're doing today is actually trying to take that through digital technology a step further to make our objects, our artifacts, something living with us, we can play with, something like another living building or object or thing. This is the theme of some of the other projects we're doing, and I'm going a bit faster here because I understand it's getting. I mean, Bruno. I was told I could talk for over an hour, but I really want to have more time for the discussion. I'll show you briefly. This is a bus stop we just presented a few days ago in Florence. Remember the diagram I showed you, the digital and the physical. The U is in the middle, the people, the digital infrastructure and the physical infrastructure. So in this case, the concept was like a info tape, like a tape for information that we can actually spread into the city, and that gives information back to citizens. Imagine real-time information about taxis, about where to go, about what to do. You know, it can become like a bus stop, it can become like a bus pole, and in Florence, they actually have 1,000 new bus poles to install, and a few hundred new bus stops, bus shelters to install. So they're one of our partners, and they asked us to develop this as an interactive digital piece of furniture in the city. You know, they want a number of things. They liked Zaragoza, so of course they wanted a fountain, an interactive fountain, nebulizer, lighting effect. I mean, some of this is a bit cuckoo. I mean, aromatherapy. They thought that, you know, when the bus is late, there's some aromas that can actually make you more relaxed. So that could become a nice way to interact and be on the safe side. Music broadcast. You know, social network. I will skip some of this. The main idea is to do like on the iPhone, to have this big place in the city that hasn't been developed yet. That's a tactile screen where you can leave graffitis that then can be erased just by the click of a mouse. But you know, you can have just this map, say where do you want to go. It's very simple interaction. Say I want to go here, and it will tell you in real time how you get there based on the status of the buses. So it becomes a very tactile interface through a piece of urban furniture. So you just say I want to go here, and you get this information. Brief. Another concept is that every piece will be different from the other. You know, most of you are familiar with the idea of CAD/CAM, computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing. The fact that today we can do what is called mass customization. So instead of doing everything the same, we can do everything different with the same price. So this thing, for instance, will have photovoltaics to power itself, and every bus stop, bus shelter will be different in order to optimize the directionality of the sun. This is the pole prototype, one of them. This is e-ink. I'm not sure if it has arrived in France yet, but it's what is becoming very popular in the US with the Amazon Kindle. It hasn't arrived in Italy, for instance, but it's something like a piece of paper. They can actually, it's digital, so you can change and become whatever you want. It's also developed at MIT, and now is in production. So it's covered with ink and has this tactile map down there. Here are some tests. It's anti-graffiti, and hopefully the glass is it's a special glass, anti-graffiti and anti-vandalism. And that's the other thing where the tape becomes actually the shelter. So not the pole, but the shelter, and becomes this tactile thing. You got the tape that collects the energy through the photovoltaics that you can touch and get information. Is a distributor of digital information in the city. And then you got the rest is only just really this glass casing for the rest. I just presented a few days ago, and again with the idea of creating spaces, we're going to scale smaller and smaller scales. There's just a couple of 2 or 3 more projects. This is something that we presented this year, and it came from a question. Again, it was a project both with Torino and Boston and MIT. And the question is, you know, it came from a big company that does hotels and hotel rooms. So the question was, what if your room, you travel a lot, every night in a different country, in a different place, you know, anywhere in the world could always fit you like the gloves on your hand. But how can you customize it? What if you have 5 pairs of gloves and you always switch between them? You know, then our idea was, let's start with this type of things. You're probably familiar, these pin elements. We played with them a lot at the Media Lab at MIT and tried to what if you could actually do that and use it as a building material for a room, for our living space? And so this is what came out of it. You know, if you go home with one night, 2 people or 3 people, you can change the bed size. Give you a massage.
And everywhere I go, there's always something to remind me of another place in time. Where love had traveled far and found me. We stayed outside till 2, waiting for the light to come back. We didn't talk, I knew, until you asked what